But first, London Mayor Sadiq Khan has launched a public consultation on his wish to seize control of Oxford Street. You may remember Sadiq announced last September that he had received the backing of Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner to reignite his plans. However, as more details emerge, are the mayor's plans now stuck in the slow lane? This morning, Sadiq was heard saying that Westminster has failed on Oxford Street. The London Standard's Transport and City Hall editor Ross Lydall caught up with the mayor to find out more. They also discussed the new public consultation, what's currently wrong with Oxford Street, and when he expects to see changes on the ground.
Sadiq, you've just told colleagues there that Westminster Council has failed on Oxford Street. Could you just explain what you mean?
What we've seen over recent years is the decline of Oxford Street over a number of years. We know this is a road of huge strategic importance. It spans two boroughs. What businesses and visitors and the government wants is to make sure we can make the most of this wonderful national asset. We'll be working with the government, working with businesses, working with residents, working with the councils to make sure we can return this street to its former glory.
There's a Labour council in charge of Westminster. Do you not have faith in what they were proposing to do?
Look, some things are above party politics. It's really important that Londoners know that I will work with anybody, whether they're Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem, Green, if they're political or not political. What businesses want is the mayor to be pro-business, like the government is pro-business. We'll be working with the businesses, the residents, the government, and indeed councils to make sure we can return this street to its former glory.
Labour just lost the by-election in Westminster last night. Do you feel you've got to get your skates on to get Oxford Street pedestrianisation over the line before the next borough elections?
The key thing is to get the right scheme moving forward and to do things procedurally properly. So the consultation that begins today is asking people to respond to the principle of pedestrianising Oxford Street. We'll then read the responses we receive, listen to the views of those who respond. We'll be preparing plans later in this year, subject to consultation, about what those plans will be going forward. What we don't want to do is, rush a scheme, not follow due process, not listen to experts about how they want this scheme to be successful. What we all want is to have Oxford Street return to its former glory.
But it's a consultation, not a referendum, so even if the responses are overwhelmingly negative, you would still be able to proceed, wouldn't you?
Well, let's not hypothesise what may happen in the consultation. As a consultation, we're consulting on the area, we're consulting on the governorship of the area, and we're consulting the principle of pedestrianising the street.
What would you say is wrong with Oxford Street just now?
Well, anybody who's walked down that street, I was there just last weekend, will see it's a street that looks tired. There are too many shops that are empty. There are too many poor quality shops in my view, and there aren't enough flagship stores. What we want to do is have Oxford Street return to its former glory, but also recognise that actually it could be a meeting point for retail, for culture, for leisure. It can be a place that doesn't just have brilliant shops, but also a place where we can organise events, which is green, which is sustainable, which is regenerated.
The consultation documents indicate that you would impose a sort of cross-rail type levy on businesses within the zone. How would that work?
Well, let's do one thing at a time. What the consultation is about is asking for people's views on the principle of pedestrianising the street. Let's wait and see what people say in relation to that.
But the documents do set out how this would be funded and how businesses would be expected to contribute to the pedestrianisation costs.
No, what we're talking about is a huge appetite from not just the private sector, not just philanthropy, but from others who want to contribute towards this street being pedestrianised. What we're consulting on is the principle of pedestrianising this street. What I know is there's a huge appetite from the business community, but also from philanthropy, to have a street like Oxford Street that is a focal point for retail, culture and leisure.
Westminster Council say that they have essentially struck a bargain so that the footprint of the mayoral corporation will be narrower than previously envisaged, and also buses would continue to run in the eastern half of Oxford Street. Is it your long-term aim, though, to pedestrianise the entire length of the street?
I'm very happy with the area that we're consulting on. I'm pleased to see the councils come around to my way of thinking, and long may that continue, because that's the sensible thing to do, work with the mayor and the government and the businesses rather than being an obstacle to progress.
So the buses will remain in the section between Oxford Circus and Tottenham Court Road?
So what we're going to do is consult on the principle of pedestrianising the street, the area and the governorship. We'll then later on be working on what we do with the buses, with the cyclists and with the black taxi trade as well.
Okay. Okay, last question. What's your sort of timeline? When would you expect to see changes on the ground?
Well, we want to make progress as soon as possible. I mean, the problem with the way development corporations are set up is the legislation is quite clunky and it takes quite a long time to do this. We want to do things properly. Clearly, if there's a huge appetite from those who respond to consultation, the councils, businesses and so forth, we can move more speedily even before we've set up the formal architecture of the MDC. But we've got to wait and see what the responses are.
Ross joins me now. Ross, there were two interesting things about this interview, weren't there?
Yes, the first was that the interviews all took place not on Oxford Street, but in Southwark, at the TfL headquarters. Their main building is the Palestra building, and Sadiq chose to be interviewed on a balcony with the City of London behind him. Now, it's kind of weird that you launch a major consultation on changing the most famous high street in the country, and you don't actually set foot on it to be interviewed. The second thing that was unusual was that the Mayor's press office and the entire consultation documents didn't include any pictures of what Oxford Street will look like should it come under the Mayor's control. Now, it's likely it will come under the Mayor's control, but you'd think that if they're about to ask Londoners, what do you think about our plans, they would at least have some sort of visual demonstration of what Oxford Street could look like under the Mayor's control. Alas, there were none. We were simply referred back to pictures that were issued back in sort of 2017 by Westminster Council, indeed the Tory Council, the very council that the Mayor has been criticising, saying it failed to actually improve the area. So it did feel a little bit like, for a major event, that City Hall didn't have all its ducks in a row and really could have done a better job at launching this consultation and asking Londoners what they think.
And there have been a couple of developments since this morning.
What came as unexpected this morning is his description of Westminster Council as having failed Oxford Street. Now, that's quite a sort of incendiary thing to say, especially because the council has been under Labour control since 2022. Essentially, the council had its own plans to redevelop Oxford Street, but when the Mayor announced he wanted to intervene back last September, the council essentially had to put its own plans in the waste paper bin. It's unusual politics for the Mayor to seek to sort of clash swords with a council, especially a Labour council, and one as sort of important as Westminster Council. The Mayor's spokesman later clarified, though, that the Mayor was trying to talk about Westminster Council when it was under previous Tory control. The Tories ran Westminster up until 2022, and he wasn't really referring to Westminster Council under Labour control. Nevertheless, it did seem to be a bit of a gaffe to an extent, or perhaps not the best chosen phrase.